My husband left me for a richer woman, laughing that I'd never make it without him. He thought he upgraded, until he drove by and saw me moving into my new $2.5 million house. His jaw dropped, his new girlfriend's smile vanished, and I just waved from the porch. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. The security monitor on my kitchen island buzzed softly, pulling my attention away from the caterers arranging the smoked salmon platters. I tapped the screen, and there they were. Standing at the wrought iron gates of my Oak Ridge Heights estate, looking like two people who had gotten lost on their way to a country club mixer. Greg was adjusting his tie in the reflection of the camera lens, sweating slightly despite the crisp Boston autumn air. And next to him, Vanessa. She was inspecting her manicure, looking bored, utterly detached from the reality that she was standing on the property of the woman whose life she had incinerated 3 years ago. I took a sip of my sparkling water, letting the bubbles fizz against my tongue, grounding me. They had no idea. They thought they were attending an exclusive mixer for potential investors in a new European banking venture. My dear friend Judy had orchestrated the invite list perfectly, ensuring it landed on Greg's desk at Pinnacle Investments just when he was desperate for a new connection. He didn't know the host. He just knew the address, and in Boston, an Oak Ridge Heights address screams power, old money, and opportunity. I zoomed in on the screen. Greg looked older. The gray at his temples wasn't distinguished, it looked stressed. His suit was expensive, probably Italian, but it fit him a little too tightly around the middle, a sign of too many business dinners and not enough time at the gym. Vanessa, on the other hand, looked sharp, dangerous, and expensive. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe during my marriage to Greg. "Ma'am," one of the servers asked, holding up a tray of crystal flutes. "Shall we start pouring the champagne?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. "Open the gates. Let them in." I watched the heavy iron gates swing open on the monitor. Greg's Audi rolled up the long, winding driveway, flanked by century-old oak trees that were currently shedding leaves of gold and crimson. I could imagine the conversation inside that car. Greg would be telling Vanessa to be charming, to smile, to help him close a deal. Vanessa would be complaining about the drive or wondering if the host was worth her time. They parked next to a Bentley and a vintage Porsche. I saw Greg's eyes widen as he stepped out, taking in the limestone facade of the house, the floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the sunset, and the sheer scale of the property. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture, a far cry from the suburban colonial we had shared. This house was worth $2.5 million, paid for in cash and stock options. And every single brick of it was mine. I moved to the foyer. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from fear, but from a potent cocktail of adrenaline and anticipation. This was the moment I had replayed in my head 1,000 times while eating instant noodles in a cold apartment. This was the moment that had kept me awake during 18-hour workdays. The massive oak front doors opened, and the buzz of conversation from the 50 or so guests drifted out. Greg and Vanessa stepped into the grand foyer, their eyes darting around, assessing the competition, assessing the wealth. Vanessa whispered something to Greg, a smirk playing on her lips, probably a critique of the art on the walls or the floral arrangements. She was used to being the wealthiest person in the room, thanks to her daddy's bank account. Tonight, she was in for a rude awakening. I stood at the top of the sweeping marble staircase. I was wearing a midnight blue gown that fit like a second skin, tailored to perfection, paired with sapphire earrings that caught the light from the chandelier. I waited. I waited until the crowd naturally parted, sensing the arrival of the host. Greg looked up. His eyes scanned the staircase, looking for a man, probably some gray-haired CEO. His gaze swept past me, then snapped back. He blinked. Once. Twice. He took a half step back, nearly tripping over the hem of Vanessa's dress. Welcome, I said, my voice projecting clearly over the low hum of jazz music. I'm so glad you could make it. Vanessa looked up then, her bored expression vanishing instantly. Her mouth opened slightly, then snapped shut. She grabbed Greg's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his suit jacket. "Greg," she hissed, loud enough for the people at the bottom of the stairs to hear. Is that the housekeeper?" I descended the stairs slowly, one hand gliding down the polished banister. Every step was a statement. Every click of my heels echoed the hard work, the tears, and the absolute resilience it took to get here. I reached the bottom floor and walked straight up to them. The circle of guests around us fell silent, sensing the tension. "Hello, Greg," I said, stopping just outside his personal space. I smelled his cologne, the same one I used to buy for him for Christmas. It made me nauseous. "Hello, Vanessa." Greg was pale. All the blood had drained from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost in a designer suit. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the crystal chandelier above us, then back at me, his brain trying to compute the impossible equation before him. "You," Greg stammered, his voice cracking. "What are you doing here? Did you get a job catering?" It was so typical. Even standing in my own foyer, wearing a gown worth more than his car, he couldn't conceive that I was the owner. He needed to believe I was serving the food, not paying for it. I didn't answer immediately. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a heavy, cream-colored business card with gold-embossed lettering. I held it out to him between two fingers. "No, Greg," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. "I don't work for the caterer." He took the card automatically, his hands shaking slightly. He looked down at it. "Meredith Brooks, founder and CEO. Horizon Tech." "I own the place," I whispered, leaning in so only he and Vanessa could hear. "And I own the company that just outbid you for the European contract. Welcome to my home." The look on his face? It wasn't just shock. It was the total destruction of his ego. And before I tell you what happened next, I need to tell you how we got here. Because to understand the sweetness of this victory, you have to understand the bitterness of the betrayal. Before we dive into the past, I want to know who is riding shotgun with me on this journey. Let me know in the comments what city or state you are watching from right now. I love seeing how far our community reaches. Now, let's go back 3 years, to the day I thought my life was perfect. Part 2, The Perfect Wife's Shadow, 910. 3 years ago, if you had looked at my life from the outside, you would have envied me. I was Mrs. Greg Brooks, wife of the rising star at Pinnacle Investments. We lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. We drove nice cars. We went on vacations to the Caribbean. I had a closet full of clothes appropriate for corporate dinners and charity galas. I was the picture-perfect executive wife. But pictures don't show you what happens when the camera stops flashing. I was 42 years old, and I was invisible. I had graduated top of my class in economics. I had dreams of starting my own consultancy firm, of building systems that would change how people managed their money. But when I met Greg, his career was taking off, and he needed support. He needed someone to manage the house, manage his social calendar, proofread his reports, and charmingly entertain his clients. "We're a team, Meredith," he used to tell me, usually after I had spent 3 days planning a dinner party for his boss. He would wrap his arms around me, kissing my neck. "I bring home the salary, but you make the success possible. I couldn't do it without you." I believed him. I drank the Kool-Aid. I convinced myself that his promotions were our promotions. I convinced myself that putting my ambition in a box in the attic was a noble sacrifice for the sake of our family. But over the last year of our marriage, the tone had shifted. The "we're a team" speeches stopped. Instead, there were subtle digs. Little comments that chipped away at my confidence like a pickaxe against ice. Meredith, do you have to wear that dress? It makes you look matronly, he'd say before we left for an event. Or, don't bore the CEO with your little ideas about market trends, honey. Just stick to asking about his grandkids. That's what you're good at. I felt myself shrinking. I became quieter. I started second-guessing everything I said. I was walking on eggshells in my own home, terrified of triggering his disdain. The breaking point began on a Tuesday night in November. It was the annual Pinnacle Gala. I had spent weeks preparing for it. I had researched the new board members, memorized their spouses' names, and even brushed up on current stock market trends so I wouldn't look foolish. I was wearing a new black dress that I thought looked elegant. Greg barely looked at me when I walked down the stairs. Ready? Let's go. Traffic is going to be a nightmare, was all he said. At the party, he abandoned me almost immediately to go network near the bar. I did my duty. I smiled until my cheeks hurt. I listened to the CFO's wife talk about her poodle's anxiety for 20 minutes. I was playing the role I had been cast in. Around 10 o'clock, I went to the ladies' room to touch up my lipstick. I was exhausted. I just wanted to go home, take off my heels, and watch a movie. I was in one of the stalls when the door to the restroom opened and two women walked in. I recognized the voices immediately. One was Sarah, a young administrative assistant at Pinnacle, and the other was a woman I didn't know well, someone from the marketing department. "Did you see Greg Brooks tonight?" the marketing woman asked. "He's practically drooling over the new vice president's daughter." My hand froze, the lipstick hovering halfway to my mouth. "Vanessa Sterling?" Sarah laughed. "Oh, everyone knows about that. It's embarrassing. He follows her around like a puppy. And she loves it. She loves knowing she has him wrapped around her finger." "What about his wife? Meredith?" Sarah scoffed, but there was pity in her voice. "She's nice, but, come on. Have you seen Vanessa? She's 30, she's gorgeous, and her last name is Sterling. Greg is ambitious. He looks at Meredith and sees the past. He looks at Vanessa and sees a seat on the board of directors. Men are trash," the marketing woman said. "He's going to leave her, you know. The rumor is he's just waiting for his bonus to clear so he can afford the divorce lawyer." The door opened and closed as they left. I sat on the closed toilet seat, unable to breathe. The tiles on the floor started to blur. It wasn't just the affair. It was the calculation. It was the fact that my husband, the man I had given 15 years of my life to, was looking at me like an expired asset that needed to be liquidated. I wanted to burst out of that stall, march into the ballroom, and slap him. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Decades of conditioning kicked in. Don't make a scene. Be the perfect wife. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe it's just gossip. I washed my hands, fixed my makeup, and walked back out there. I found Greg standing by the bar, laughing at something a striking brunette in a red dress was saying. Vanessa Sterling. She was radiant, confident, and everything I wasn't. She had a hand resting casually on Greg's forearm. When Greg saw me approaching, he didn't pull away. He didn't look guilty. He just looked annoyed that I had interrupted. "Ready to go?" I asked, my voice flat. "In a minute, Meredith." "I'm discussing business," he snapped. That night, I lay in bed next to him, staring at the ceiling. He was snoring softly, oblivious to the fact that my world was crumbling. I realized then that the woman in the bathroom was right. I was a placeholder. And my expiration date was coming up fast. I needed to know the truth. I needed proof. And God help him, if I found it, I wasn't going to just fade away. Denial is a powerful drug, but once it wears off, reality hits you like a freight train. For the next 2 weeks, I played detective. I watched his phone habits, how he placed it face down on the table, how he took calls in the garage for better reception. But the smoking gun didn't come from a text message. It came in the pocket of his gray blazer. I was taking his suits to the dry cleaner. I always checked the pockets, a habit born from years of finding loose change, gum wrappers, or business cards. In the inside pocket of his charcoal suit, I felt a piece of stiff paper. I pulled it out. It was a receipt from Lucian's, the most exclusive jeweler in Boston. Item: diamond tennis bracelet, 3.5 carats. Price: $12,500. Date: October 14th. October 14th was our 15th wedding anniversary. My heart leaped into my throat. For a split second, a pathetic, hopeful part of me thought, maybe he forgot to give it to me? Maybe it's hidden in the closet as a surprise? But then I remembered October 14th, Greg had called me at 4 p.m. to say he was stuck in a crisis meeting and wouldn't be home until late. I had eaten our anniversary dinner alone, a roast chicken that had gone cold, and watched a rerun of a sitcom. He had come home at midnight, smelling of scotch and mints, and fell asleep without even wishing me a happy anniversary. He hadn't bought this for me. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the receipt. I picked it up and stared at it until the numbers burned into my retinas. $12,000. From our joint savings account. Money we were supposedly saving for a vacation home or retirement. I didn't take the suit to the cleaners. I put the receipt back in his pocket and waited. 3 days later, I tracked his car. I used the Find My Phone feature on our family plan, something he was too arrogant or too tech illiterate to disable. The dot on the map wasn't at the Pinnacle office. It was at the Four Seasons Hotel downtown. I drove there. I sat in my car across the street, watching the entrance. An hour later, they walked out. Greg and Vanessa. And there it was, glittering on her wrist in the afternoon sun, the diamond tennis bracelet. She was laughing, her head thrown back, holding his hand. He looked at her with a mix of adoration and hunger that he hadn't shown me in a decade. I didn't confront them there. I drove home, packed his bags, and threw them onto the front lawn. It was a cliché, I know, but it felt incredibly satisfying to watch his expensive Italian loafers hit the grass. When he pulled into the driveway 2 hours later and saw his luggage, he didn't look heartbroken. He looked furious. He stormed into the house. "Have you lost your mind, Meredith? What are the neighbors going to think?" "I don't care about the neighbors, Greg," I screamed, tossing the receipt at him. "I care that you spent $12,000 on a bracelet for your mistress on our anniversary." He looked at the receipt, then at me. His face hardened. There was no apology. No begging for forgiveness. The mask simply fell off. "Mistress is a dirty word, Meredith," he said coldly. "Vanessa is my partner. In every sense." "Partner?" I laughed, a hysterical, jagged sound. "I've been your partner for 15 years. I built this life with you." "You?" Greg sneered. He walked over to the liquor cabinet and poured himself a drink, completely calm. "You didn't build anything. You kept the house clean. You spent my money. You rode my coattails. Vanessa is different. She has connections. Her father is on the board. She challenges me. You're just comfortable. You're a Honda Accord, Meredith. Reliable, boring, and high mileage. Vanessa is a Porsche." The cruelty of it took my breath away. It wasn't just that he cheated. It was that he despised me. He despised the very loyalty he had demanded from me. "Get out," I whispered. "No," he said, taking a sip of his scotch. "This is my house. The deed is in my name. The mortgage is paid from my salary. You get out. We have a prenup, I said, my voice trembling. I get half. Read the fine print, darling, he smiled, a shark showing its teeth. The prenup protects assets acquired before the marriage and assets tied to the family trust. The house is in a trust. The investments are protected. You get a small settlement, sure. Enough to rent a nice little apartment for a year or two. But you aren't getting half of my empire. I stood there, realizing how thoroughly I had been outmaneuvered. He had been planning this. He had structured our finances for years to ensure that if this day came, I would be left with scraps. I'll get a lawyer, I threatened. Go ahead, he shrugged. I have a team of corporate litigators on retainer. You have, what? Your grocery money? He set his glass down. I want you out by the weekend. Vanessa wants to redecorate, and she hates your taste in curtains. That was the moment something inside me broke. But it wasn't a break that shattered me into pieces. It was a break that snapped me awake. I looked at him, this man I had loved, this man who was now looking at me like I was a squatter in his life, and I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my gut. Fine, I said. I'll go. I didn't cry. I walked past him, went upstairs, and started packing. Not his things this time. Mine. I took only what mattered. My clothes, my laptop, my diploma from the wall of the home office, and the photo of my parents. I left the jewelry he gave me. I left the expensive furniture. I left the life of Mrs. Greg Brooks behind. The apartment was in a neighborhood of Boston I used to only drive through when I took a wrong turn. It was a fourth-floor walk-up with peeling paint in the hallway that smelled permanently of boiled cabbage and damp wool. The heating radiator clanked like a dying engine all night, and the view from my single window was a brick wall and a dumpster. It was a far cry from the manicured lawns of suburbia. My first night there, I sat on a mattress on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed frame yet. I ate takeout noodles with a plastic fork, wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants, shivering because the insulation was non-existent. I was 42 years old. My bank account had $4,000 in it, the emergency cash I had managed to siphon off over the years. The settlement Greg promised was tied up in legal delays, another one of his tactics to starve me out. I felt old. I felt used up. I felt stupid. I spent the first week staring at the wall. I replayed every conversation, every red flag I had ignored. Why didn't I keep my career? Why didn't I insist on my name on the deed? Why did I trust him? The shame was heavier than the grief. I was the cliché discarded first wife. The starter wife. One morning, I woke up to find a leak in the ceiling dripping muddy water onto my laptop case. I scrambled to move it, slipping on the wet floor, and fell hard on my hip. I lay there on the cold, dirty linoleum, staring at the water stain spreading above me, and I started to sob. Not polite crying. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I was done. I wanted to give up. I thought about calling Greg, begging him for a little more money, maybe apologizing for making a scene. Then my phone rang. It was my mother, calling from Florida. I hadn't told her everything yet. Just that we were taking a break. I wiped my face and answered, trying to sound normal. Hi, Mom. Meredith, honey, you sound terrible, she said instantly. Moms always know. I'm fine, just a cold, I lied. Listen to me, she said, her voice dropping to a serious tone. I was looking through some old boxes in the garage, and I found your college thesis. The one about emerging markets and digital banking infrastructure. Mom, that's ancient history, I sighed, pulling myself up to sit against the kitchen cabinet. I read it, she continued. I didn't understand half of it, but I understood the grade. A+. The professor wrote a note on the back, Miss Brooks, you have a mind that could run Wall Street if you wanted to. Do you remember that? I was Ms. Carter then, I corrected softly. Exactly, she said. You were Meredith Carter. The girl who fixed the church's accounting system when she was 16. The girl who tutored the football team in math. Greg didn't make you smart, Meredith. And he can't take your brain in the divorce settlement. I looked at the leaky ceiling. I looked at my laptop. He called me a Honda Accord, Mom, I whispered, the hurt bubbling up again. Reliable and boring. Hondas run forever, honey, my mom snapped. Porsches break down the minute they hit a pothole. You aren't a car. You're a driver. Now, get up off the floor, I know you're on the floor, and go figure out how to get your life back. We didn't raise a quitter. I hung up the phone. I sat there for another 10 minutes. Then, I stood up. I went to the bathroom, washed my face with cold water, and looked in the mirror. I looked tired. My roots were showing. I had dark circles. But my eyes were the same ones that had stared down that professor 20 years ago. I walked back to the main room, opened my laptop, and bypassed the job search sites for administrative assistants. Instead, I opened a blank document. I typed a single line at the top. Project Phoenix. I wasn't going to get a job. I was going to build a company. I was going to take the ideas Greg had dismissed as boring and I was going to turn them into a weapon. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Kevin Liu. He was a guy I knew from college, a brilliant coder who was socially awkward but fiercely loyal. We used to study together in the library until 3 a.m. He had always told me I was the visionary, and he was the builder. I pressed call. Hello? His voice sounded groggy. Kevin, it's Meredith Carter, I said, using my maiden name. I have an idea. And I need a CTO. Are you busy? There was a pause. Meredith? Wow. I haven't heard from you in forever. I'm actually between jobs right now. What's the idea? I want to build a wealth management platform that uses predictive AI to personalize investment strategies for mid-tier firms. The kind of firms that big banks ignore. Firms like, well, the ones competing with Pinnacle. That sounds ambitious, Kevin said, his interest peaking. Do you have funding? I looked around my dumpy apartment. No. But I have a lot of anger, and I have nothing left to lose. Can we meet for coffee? The cheap kind. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a 14-hour brainstorming session at Kevin's kitchen table. Kevin lived in a small townhouse that smelled of old electronics and takeout pizza, but to me, it felt like a command center. The problem with Pinnacle's software, I explained, sketching a diagram on a napkin, is that it's clunky. It was built 10 years ago. It's legacy code wrapped in a shiny interface. Greg used to complain about it constantly when he was drunk. He said it takes their analysts 4 hours to generate a report that should take 10 minutes. Kevin nodded, his eyes scanning my messy drawing. So, we automate the data entry, use an API to pull real-time market feeds, and create a dashboard that clients can actually understand. Exactly, I said. We cut the processing time by 80%. We sell speed. We sell clarity. And we sell it cheaper than the bloated systems they use now. We called it Horizon Tech. Because that's where we were looking forward. The next 6 months were a blur of caffeine, code, and desperation. I moved my meager belongings into Kevin's spare room to save rent money, which we poured into server costs. We were the oddest couple imaginable, a 42-year-old divorcee and a 43-year-old bachelor living like college students. But it worked. I sold my remaining designer handbags on eBay. I cashed out a tiny IRA I had from a job before I got married. It wasn't much, maybe $20,000 total. That was our seed money. I became the CEO, the marketing director, the sales team, and the janitor. Kevin was the engineering department. While he coded the back end, I started cold calling. I called every mid-sized investment firm in New England. I got hung up on. A lot. Who are you again? Horizon? Never heard of you. Click. Sorry, we're happy with our current provider. Click. Ms. Brooks, wait, are you Greg Brooks' wife? That was the hardest part. The industry was small. People knew the name. When they asked, I had to swallow my pride. I'm Meredith Brooks, CEO of Horizon. My personal life isn't relevant to the fact that I can save your firm 30% on operational costs. Most of them didn't care. They saw a middle-aged woman going through a divorce, trying to play startup founder. They laughed. But I kept calling. One afternoon, I got a meeting with a small boutique firm in Cambridge. The owner, a woman named Judy who looked like she ate nails for breakfast, listened to my pitch for 15 minutes without blinking. "Show me the demo," she said. I opened my laptop. I prayed the Wi-Fi wouldn't crash. I showed her how Horizon could generate a complex portfolio analysis in 30 seconds. Judy watched the screen. She typed in a few commands herself. Then she leaned back in her chair and looked at me. "You built this?" "My partner and I did." "It's better than what I'm paying 10 grand a month for," Judy admitted. "But you're a nobody, Meredith." "No offense. Why should I trust my client data to a company that operates out of a spare bedroom?" I looked her in the eye. "Because the big companies don't care about you, Judy. To them, you're a rounding error. To me, you're everything. If you call me at 2 a.m. with a bug, I will answer the phone. If you need a feature, we will build it. I am hungry. I am fighting for my life here. You want a partner who is fighting for survival because they will work harder than anyone else." Judy stared at me. Then, slowly, a grin spread across her face. "I like fighters," she said. "I'll give you a 6-month contract. But if you screw up, I will destroy you." "Deal," I said, shaking her hand. Walking out of that office, I felt a rush I hadn't felt since my college graduation. I called Kevin. "We got one. We got a client." "Yes," he shouted, dropping something that sounded like a keyboard. It was a small victory, but it was oxygen. Judy's firm gave us credibility. With her testimonial, we got a second client. Then a third. We weren't rich, we were barely breaking even, but we were growing. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on Greg. Not out of love, but out of strategy. I followed the business news. Pinnacle was struggling. Their quarterly reports were missing targets. Rumors were swirling that their tech infrastructure was failing to keep up with high-frequency trading demands. I knew Greg would be stressed. I knew he would be looking for a miracle. And then, 8 months after I left, a thick envelope arrived at Kevin's townhouse. It was addressed to me, forwarded from my old address. It was an invitation. "You are cordially invited to the housewarming party of Greg Brooks and Vanessa Sterling." I stared at the heavy cardstock. The address was in Oak Ridge Heights. Not the $1.2 million house I thought they bought. No, this address was for a different property, a rental, I suspected, or maybe Vanessa's daddy bought it for them. My first instinct was to burn it. Why would I go? To be humiliated? To see them happy? But then I looked closer. The RSVP card had a little note scribbled on the back in Greg's handwriting. "Come see what success looks like." No hard feelings. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a victory lap. He wanted to rub my nose in it. He wanted to show me that he had one. I looked at Kevin, who was eating cereal at the counter. I'm going, I said. To the ex's party? Are you crazy? Kevin asked. That's emotional suicide. No, I said, a plan forming in my mind. It's reconnaissance. Pinnacle is bleeding. Greg is arrogant. If I go there, play the defeated ex-wife, play the poor me card, he'll let his guard down. I need to know exactly what's wrong with their system so we can build the thing that replaces it. Kevin smiled, shaking his head. You're scary, Meredith. I like it. I didn't rent a dress for the party. I wore a simple gray suit, professional, modest, unimpressive. I wanted to look exactly how Greg expected me to look, defeated. I drove my beat-up sedan and parked on the street so the valet wouldn't see the rust on the bumper. The house was nice. Not 2.5 million nice, but impressive. It was a sprawling modern glass box that looked cold and sterile. I walked up the driveway, steeling myself. Vanessa opened the door. She was wearing white, a bold choice for a housewarming, or maybe a subtle hint that she was the new bride. Meredith, she exclaimed, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. You actually came. We weren't sure. I mean, given your situation. I wanted to wish you well, I said, forcing a smile. And Greg insisted. Oh, he's just so generous like that, she beamed, linking her arm through mine as if we were old friends. Come in, come in. Let me show you around. We're doing a total remodel of the kitchen, Italian marble, imported of course. She dragged me through the house, pointing out every expensive detail. This vase is Ming Dynasty. This rug is customized silk. It was a performance. She was marking her territory. And here's Greg's office, she said, opening a set of double doors. Greg was inside, holding court with 3 other men in suits. They were laughing, holding tumblers of whiskey. When he saw me, the laughter stopped abruptly. Meredith, he said, strutting over. He looked good, I had to admit. Success, or the appearance of it, suited him. Glad you could make it. How are you holding up? Found a job yet? The men behind him smirked. I'm managing, I said quietly, looking at the floor. It's been an adjustment. Well, if you need a reference for a receptionist position, let me know, he said loudly, clapping a hand on my shoulder. I still have some pull around town. Thank you, Greg, I said. That's very kind. He turned back to his friends, dismissing me. Anyway, as I was saying, the merger is going to be huge. Once we get the tech issues sorted out, we're golden. My ears perked up. I heard the data migration was a disaster, one of the men said. Lost client records for 2 days? Greg waved his hand dismissively. Growing pains. We're looking for a new vendor. The current RFP, request for proposal, is out, but honestly, nobody has the capacity to handle our volume. We need a custom build, but the timeline is tight. The board is breathing down my neck to have a solution by Q3. What's the budget? The man asked. For the right fix? 5 million, Greg said. Maybe 7. Daddy Sterling wants it done yesterday. $7 million. I kept my face neutral, but my heart was doing backflips. $7 million. That was the contract that would put Horizon on the map. That was the contract that would make us. Can I use the restroom? I asked, interrupting them. Down the hall, second door on the left, Greg said, barely looking at me. I walked down the hall, but I didn't go to the bathroom. I slipped into the kitchen where the caterers were setting up. I saw Sarah, Greg's assistant, arguing with a waiter about ice. Sarah looked frazzled. She had always liked me when I was Mrs. Brooks because I remembered her birthday and treated her like a human being. Greg treated her like furniture. Sarah? I whispered. She spun around. Meredith. Hi. Rough night? He's a nightmare, she hissed, checking to make sure no one was listening. He screamed at me because the napkins were the wrong shade of ecru. I swear, I'm going to quit. Don't quit yet, I said softly. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small notepad. I scribbled Kevin's encrypted email address on it. Sarah, I know about the RFP for the new system. I know Greg is desperate. I have a solution. But I need the technical specs. The real ones, not the public ones. If we win this bid, I will hire you as my operations manager. Double your salary. Full benefits. And no one will ever scream at you about napkins. Sarah looked at the paper. She looked at the door where Greg's booming laugh was echoing. She looked back at me. He says you're living in a dump, she whispered. I am, I said. For now. Help me change that. Sarah didn't say a word. She took the paper and shoved it into her bra. Check your email at midnight. I left the party 10 minutes later. Greg didn't even notice I was gone. As I drove away in my rusty car, watching the lights of his fancy house fade in the rearview mirror, I didn't feel defeated anymore. I felt like a hunter who had just spotted the prey. He thought I was a Honda Accord. He was about to find out I was a tank. Midnight came and went. At 12:15 a.m., a secure file appeared in our inbox. It was everything. The server architecture, the API requirements, the security protocols, and most importantly, the specific pain points that the board was furious about. Sarah had come through. Kevin, wake up, I said, shaking his shoulder. He had fallen asleep on the keyboard. We have the map. For the next 3 weeks, we didn't sleep. We barely ate. We built a custom demo specifically tailored to Pinnacle's needs. We named the project Trojan. But there was a problem. If Greg saw the name Horizon Tech or Meredith Brooks on the proposal, he would shred it without reading it. He would never let his ex-wife save his company. We need a front, I told Kevin. We need to submit this blindly. We registered a shell corporation name, HT Solutions. On the paperwork, I listed my name as M. Carter and used a P.O. box in New York. It wasn't illegal, just strategic ambiguity. We stripped any mention of my past identity from the bio. I was just a financial systems architect with 20 years of experience. Technically true. The deadline for the proposal was Friday at 5 p.m. We hit submit at 4:58 p.m. Then, we waited. 2 weeks of silence. I was starting to lose hope. Maybe they figured it out. Maybe they went with a big name like IBM or Oracle. Then, on a Tuesday morning, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. This is Sarah, the voice whispered. You're in. You made the shortlist. Top 3. They want a presentation on Monday at 9 a.m. Boardroom A. Does he know? I asked. No. He just knows HT Solutions has the best technical score. He's actually excited. He thinks you guys are some hotshot team from Silicon Valley. Okay, I said, my pulse racing. Monday. We'll be there. Meredith, Sarah added. Vanessa will be there too. She's sitting in for her father. Good, I said. I'd hate for her to miss the show. The weekend before the meeting, I went shopping. I didn't go to the discount rack. I went to Neiman Marcus. I took out a credit card that was nearly maxed out and bought a suit. It was a power suit, sharp, structural, charcoal gray. I bought heels that clicked like gunshots on pavement. I got my hair done. You look terrifying, Kevin said when I walked out of the bedroom on Monday morning. He was wearing his one good suit, fidgeting with his tie. "That's the point," I said. "Let's go take back what's mine." We took the train into the city. Walking into the Pinnacle building felt surreal. I used to come here to bring Greg lunch, waiting in the lobby like a good little wife. Today, I walked past the security desk with my head high. We got into the elevator. My stomach was twisting in knots, but I breathed through it. Inhale confidence. Exhale doubt. The elevator dinged on the 40th floor, the executive suite. The receptionist looked up. "HT Solutions here for the 9 a.m. presentation," I said. "Right this way. Mr. Brooks and the board are waiting." She led us down the long corridor lined with glass walls. I could see the city skyline, the view Greg loved so much. The view he said I didn't deserve. She opened the heavy oak doors to the boardroom. The room was freezing. Corporate boardrooms are always kept at sub-zero temperatures, presumably to keep everyone alert or to preserve the vampires running the place. There were 8 people around the massive oval table. Greg sat at the head, looking important. Vanessa sat to his right, playing with a stylus on her iPad. There were a few other executives I recognized, and an older woman at the far end, Eleanor Higgins, the CEO of Pinnacle. She was a legend. Tough as nails. They were all looking at their papers. "HT Solutions," Greg said without looking up. "Come on in. You have 30 minutes. Impress us." Kevin walked in first. He set up the laptop. Then I walked in. The click of my heels on the parquet floor was the only sound in the room. I walked to the head of the table, directly opposite Greg. I placed my leather portfolio on the table. "Good morning," I said. Greg's head snapped up. For a second, time stopped. I watched the recognition hit him like a physical slap. His eyes bulged. His mouth fell open. He looked at me, then at the name M. Carter on the sheet in front of him. "Meredith," he choked out. Vanessa looked up, startled. "What is she doing here?" "Security." "I'm presenting," I said calmly. "I am M. Carter. Meredith Carter, CEO of HT Solutions." "This is a joke." Greg stood up, his face turning red. You can't be here. You're a housewife. You don't know anything about fintech." "Sit down, Mr. Brooks," Eleanor Higgins said from the end of the table. Her voice was quiet but commanded instant obedience. "We are on a schedule. If Ms. Carter is the vendor with the highest technical score, I want to hear what she has to say." "But Eleanor, she's my ex-wife." Greg protested, pointing a shaking finger at me. "This is a conflict of interest. She's doing this to get back at me." "I'm doing this to save your company $5 million a year," I cut in, looking directly at Eleanor. "And to fix the data latency issue that cost you the Anderson account last month." The room went silent. The Anderson account loss was a secret. Only the board knew. Greg looked terrified. "How do you know about that?" "I do my research," I said. "Now, do you want to keep arguing about my marital status, or do you want to see the product?" Eleanor leaned forward, clasping her hands. She looked at Greg, then at me. A small smile played on her lips. "Proceed, Ms. Carter." I nodded to Kevin. He started the demo. For the next 20 minutes, I didn't look at Greg. I focused on the screen and on Eleanor. I explained the architecture. I showed them the real-time reporting. I showed them the automated compliance checks. I spoke their language: ROI, latency, throughput, scalability. I wasn't the Honda Accord anymore. I was a Ferrari engine. When I finished, there was silence. "This is impressive," the CFO admitted. "It integrates perfectly with our legacy database." It's stolen, Vanessa blurted out. She probably stole Greg's passwords or something. She's a fraud. I turned to Vanessa slowly. Ms. Sterling, the code is proprietary. My CTO wrote it from scratch. And regarding stealing, I believe the only person in this room with a history of taking things that don't belong to them is you. Vanessa gasped. The CFO coughed to hide a laugh. Enough, Greg slammed his hand on the table. I veto this. I will not work with her. It's awkward. Business is often awkward, Greg, Eleanor said dryly. But bankruptcy is worse. This solution is miles ahead of the competition. And the price is right. She looked at me. Can you deliver this in 3 months? Yes, I said. With one condition. What condition? Greg snapped. The contract will have a non-interference clause, I said, sliding a document across the table. It states that any personal animosity or obstruction from Pinnacle executives, specifically Mr. Brooks, that hinders the implementation will result in a penalty fee of $500,000 per incident. And I report directly to Ms. Higgins. Not to Greg. Greg looked like he was going to have a stroke. You can't be serious. I am very serious, I said. I am a professional. I expect to be treated like one. Take it or leave it. Eleanor Higgins picked up the document. She read it. Then she picked up her pen. Done, she said, signing the paper. She pushed it toward Greg. Sign it, Greg. Or explain to the shareholders why we're still using a system from 2010. Greg looked at Vanessa. She looked away, refusing to make eye contact. He looked at me. I held his gaze, my face stone cold. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He signed. Welcome aboard, HT Solutions, Eleanor said, standing up. I packed up my things. As I walked past Greg, he hissed, You think you won? This isn't over. I'll make your life hell. I paused and leaned down, whispering in his ear. You already did, Greg. And look what it made me. I'm not your wife anymore. I'm your vendor. And you're late on your payment. I walked out of that boardroom, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel heavy. I felt weightless. But I knew Greg was right about one thing. It wasn't over. He was a petty, vindictive man, and I had just humiliated him in front of his boss and his mistress. He was going to come after me. But I was ready. Or so I thought. I didn't know then that Greg wasn't just incompetent, he was criminal. And his next move wouldn't just threaten my company, it would threaten my freedom. The ink on the Pinnacle contract was barely dry before the war moved from the boardroom to the server room. We had 3 months to migrate their massive, archaic data system onto Horizon's platform. It was an impossible timeline, agreed to only because I knew my team was capable of miracles. But miracles don't happen when someone is actively trying to conjure a curse. The first 2 weeks were deceptively smooth. Then, the glitches started. Not normal bugs, I'm talking about phantom data corruption. Client portfolios would vanish for 10 minutes, then reappear with the numbers scrambled. Login credentials for senior brokers would be revoked in the middle of trading hours. It was chaos. I was sitting in our cramped office, we had upgraded from Kevin's house to a small lease space in a generic office park, staring at a monitor that was flashing red alerts. It was 3 a.m. on a Thursday. It doesn't make sense, Kevin muttered, pacing behind me. He looked wrecked. His hair was a bird's nest, and he was subsisting on energy drinks. The code is clean, Meredith. I wrote the validation scripts myself. It's like the system is rejecting the data from the inside. Or someone is rejecting it, I said, a cold realization settling in my stomach. I pulled up the access logs. Thousands of lines of code scrolled by. I filtered by IP address. Most of the traffic was internal from Pinnacle's HQ. But there was a recurring ping, a small packet of data being sent every time the system crashed, originating from a remote login. Kevin, I pointed at the screen. Trace that. He sat down, his fingers flying across the keyboard. It's a VPN. Pretty standard. But, wait. The user credentials. He pulled up the user ID associated with the crash. It was an admin account, sysadmin_04. Who is sysadmin_04? I asked. According to the employee manifest Sarah sent us, it's an inactive account. Belonged to a guy who retired 2 years ago. But someone reactivated it, I whispered. I didn't need a detective. I knew who it was. Greg wasn't tech-savvy enough to do this himself, but he was petty enough to hire someone who could. He wanted us to fail. He wanted to go back to the board and say, see? She's incompetent. We need to cancel the contract. He was willing to sabotage his own company's operations just to see me humiliated. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was Greg. Of course. Rough night, Meredith, his voice was smooth, feigning concern. My brokers are screaming. They can't access the Asian markets. Eleanor is asking questions. Maybe this project is too big for you? I felt a flash of hot anger crawl up my neck. I squeezed the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. He was enjoying this. He was probably sitting in his home office, sipping brandy, watching my life's work burn. The system is stabilizing, Greg, I lied, my voice steady. Just a minor handshake protocol issue. Doesn't look minor from here, he chuckled. You know, there's a penalty clause for downtime. If this continues for another 24 hours, you're in breach of contract. That $500,000 fine you threatened me with? It works both ways, darling. He hung up. I looked at Kevin. He's right. If we don't fix this by tomorrow morning, he can legally fire us and sue us for damages. We'll be bankrupt. Kevin stopped typing. He looked at me, his eyes serious. He's using a legacy backdoor. The old system had a super user function for emergencies. They didn't document it. Whoever he hired found it. Can we patch it? If I patch it, the system goes down for 4 hours. We don't have 4 hours. Then we trap it, I said. Don't block the user. Isolate him. A sandbox? Kevin asked, a slow smile spreading across his face. Exactly. Let sysadmin_04 think he's still in the main system. Let him wreak havoc. But mirror it to a dummy server. Let him crash a ghost ship while the real passengers sail on. We worked through the sunrise. At 8 a.m., the attacks ramped up. We watched on the monitor as sysadmin_04 executed a command that should have wiped the entire client database. On his screen, it probably looked like Armageddon. On the real Pinnacle floor? Business as usual. At 9:30 a.m., I got a text from Sarah. Greg is in his office screaming at his laptop. He just threw a stapler at the wall. The system is running perfectly. What did you do? I typed back, just took out the trash. That afternoon, I sent a formal incident report to Eleanor Higgins. I detailed the unauthorized access from the zombie account and recommended a full security audit of Pinnacle's internal IT staff. I didn't name Greg directly, I didn't have absolute proof it was him, but Eleanor was smart. She would read between the lines. 2 days later, the attack stopped completely. Greg had realized his little saboteur was playing in a sandbox. We finished the migration a week ahead of schedule. When the final system live green light blinked on our dashboard, Kevin and I didn't cheer. We just collapsed onto the cheap office sofa, exhausted. We beat him, Kevin whispered, closing his eyes. For now, I said, staring at the ceiling. But he's not going to stop. He can't handle that I'm winning. The next attack won't be technical. It'll be financial. I was right. But this time, the attack came wrapped in a velvet bow. Success has a smell. It smells like fresh espresso, expensive leather, and the crisp paper of term sheets. By the end of our first year, Horizon Tech was no longer a scrappy startup. We were the girl of the Boston fintech scene. We had stabilized Pinnacle, picked up 6 more mid-sized firms, and were turning a healthy profit. I had moved out of the dumpy apartment and into a respectable condo downtown. I bought a car that didn't rattle when I hit 60 miles per hour. I even started buying clothes that weren't on sale. But Greg was looming. He requested a lunch meeting. Neutral ground, he texted. Strictly business. I agreed to meet him at the Bristol, a high-end restaurant where we used to have anniversary dinners before he started working late. I wore a cream-colored suit, projecting serene confidence. Greg arrived 10 minutes late, a power move, wearing a suit that looked more expensive than my car. You look, well, he said, sitting down and ordering a scotch without looking at the menu. I am well, Greg. What is this about? I have a 2 p.m. with a developer. Let's cut the chase, he said, leaning forward. Pinnacle is impressed. Eleanor is happy. But the board is concerned about security. We don't like our proprietary data sitting on third-party servers. Our security is better than yours ever was, I reminded him. It's about ownership, Meredith. Control. He slid a thick folder across the table. We want to acquire Horizon Tech. I stared at the folder. Excuse me? An acquisition. A full buyout. We bring the tech in-house. We bring the team in-house. He paused for effect. The offer is $27 million. The number hung in the air. 27 million. My share would be roughly 15 million after paying back investors and taxes. It was never work again money. It was buy a villa in Tuscany money. It was the kind of security I had cried for on my mattress floor just 18 months ago. And the terms? I asked, not touching the folder. Standard, Greg shrugged. You and your partner stay on for a 2-year transition period. You'd be VP of Innovation. Reporting to the CIO. Reporting to you, I corrected. Well, yes. Technically. He smiled, that charming, predatory smile. Think about it, Meredith. No more late nights. No more stress about payroll. You cash out. You win. You can retire. Go travel. Find a nice hobby. I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the fear behind his eyes. He wasn't offering me money because he valued the company. He was offering me money to silence me. To put me back in a box. If I sold, I would be his employee again. I would be under his thumb. He could bury my tech, take credit for my work, and eventually fire me when the contract was up. He wanted to buy his dignity back. It's a generous offer, he pressed. Vanessa thought it was too high, actually. But I told her, Meredith worked hard, let's be fair. That name snapped me back to reality. Vanessa thought. I took a sip of water. I thought about the 18-hour days. I thought about Kevin sleeping on the floor. I thought about Sarah risking her job to send me those files. No, I said. Greg blinked. What? You haven't even read the term sheet. I don't need to. Horizon is not for sale. Especially not to you. Don't be stupid, Meredith, his voice dropped, the charm vanishing. This is more money than you'll ever see in your life. You're one bad quarter away from bankruptcy. Take the deal. I'm not building a company to cash out, Greg. I'm building a legacy. Something you wouldn't understand. I stood up, picking up my purse. And frankly, I don't want to report to you. I prefer being the one giving the orders. You're making a mistake, he hissed, grabbing my wrist. I can crush you. Pinnacle is your biggest client. If you pull the contract, I pulled my wrist free, your system crashes, your clients leave, and your stock tanks. You need me more than I need you. Enjoy your lunch. I walked out of the restaurant, my heart pounding. I had just turned down $27 million. My mother would probably have a heart attack if she knew. But as I stepped onto Boylston Street, taking a deep breath of the city air, I knew I had made the right choice. I wasn't going to let him own me again. Not for any price. I called Kevin. I turned it down. Good, Kevin said instantly. Because I have an idea. If they want to play Monopoly, let's play. Have you heard of Meridian Analytics? The data firm? They're failing. Exactly, Kevin said. They're failing, but they own the exclusive data contract for Westbrook Financial. Westbrook Financial. Pinnacle's biggest, most hated competitor. Kevin, I said, a slow grin spreading across my face. Are you suggesting we buy them? I'm suggesting we eat the competition's lunch. Buying a company when you are still technically a startup is insanity. But insanity was becoming my baseline. Meridian Analytics was a dinosaur. They had great data but terrible delivery. Their CEO was looking for an exit due to health issues. The price tag was steep, $12 million. We didn't have $12 million in cash. I went to Judy. You turned down $27 million to ask me for a loan? Judy stared at me over her reading glasses in her corner office. I'm not asking for a loan. I'm asking for a Series B investment round, I corrected her. If we buy Meridian, we get their tech, which is compatible with ours. But more importantly, we get their client list, including Westbrook Financial. Judy tapped her pen on the desk. Westbrook hates Pinnacle. Catherine Westbrook and Eleanor Higgins have a feud going back to the 90s. If you service both, you're walking into a war zone. No, I said. If I service both, I become the arms dealer. I become the neutral ground. Neither of them can afford to fire me because then the other one gets the tech advantage. I become indispensable. Judy smiled. A terrifying, shark-like smile. I'll lead the round. But you have to close Catherine Westbrook personally. If she walks, the deal is worthless. 2 days later, I was sitting in the office of Catherine Westbrook. If Eleanor Higgins was steel, Catherine Westbrook was ice. She sat behind a glass desk that looked like it cost more than my first apartment. She didn't offer me coffee. So, she said, looking at my proposal. You're the woman causing trouble at Pinnacle. I preferred driving innovation, I said. And you're Greg Brooks' ex-wife. That is the least interesting thing about me, I replied, meeting her gaze. Catherine laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. Fair enough. Greg tried to recruit me once, years ago. Slippery man. Weak handshake. I never trusted him. Then we have that in common. You want to acquire my data provider, she said, getting to business. Why shouldn't I just build my own system? Because it will take you 2 years and cost $20 million, I said flatly. And by the time you finish, Pinnacle will be 2 versions ahead of you because they're using my platform. Or, you let me acquire Meridian. I integrate your data into Horizon's engine. You get the same speed, the same predictive analytics, and I guarantee absolute data firewalling between you and Pinnacle. And if I say no? Then I sell Meridian's data patents to Pinnacle. Greg has been eyeing them. It was a bluff. A massive bluff. But I said it with the conviction of a nun. Catherine studied me for a long moment. She saw the hunger. She saw the strategy. "You're dangerous, Meredith Brooks," she said softly. "I'm effective." "Fine," she slammed the folder shut. "I'll sign off on the acquisition. But if one bite of my data leaks to Pinnacle, I will see you into the Stone Age." Understood. The acquisition closed a month later. When the press release went out, Horizon Tech acquires Meridian Analytics, secures Westbrook partnership, my phone blew up. Pinnacle's stock took a hit because the market realized their exclusive advantage was gone. Westbrook's stock jumped. And Horizon? We were suddenly the most powerful player on the board. That night, I was working late in my office when Kevin walked in with a bottle of champagne and a pizza box. "You know," he said, popping the cork, "analysts are projecting our valuation at the next round." "Don't jinx it," I said, taking a slice of pepperoni. $300 million, he said. I choked on my pizza. What? $300 million, Meredith. We're a third of the way to being a unicorn. I sat back in my chair, the magnitude of it hitting me. A year and a half ago, I was eating noodles on a floor. Now, I was running a company worth hundreds of millions. "We did it," I whispered. "You did it," Kevin said. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than professional admiration in his eyes. There was warmth. A quiet, steady affection that terrified me more than Catherine Westbrook ever could. "I need to buy a house," I blurted out, breaking the tension. "I can't live in a condo anymore. I need space. I need a fortress." "Then buy a fortress," Kevin smiled, raising his plastic cup. "To Fort Meredith." "To Fort Meredith," I clinked my cup against his. But castles attract dragons. And the biggest dragon of all was about to wake up. The search for the house wasn't just about real estate, it was about reclaiming my identity. I looked at penthouses, I looked at historic brownstones, but nothing felt right. Then, my realtor drove me up the winding roads of Oak Ridge Heights. "This one just came on the market," she said. The previous owner was a European diplomat who got recalled. "It's aggressive." We pulled through the gates. The house was a masterpiece of glass, steel, and limestone, perched on a cliff overlooking the city. It was modern, cold, and utterly magnificent. It had an infinity pool that seemed to drop off into the skyline. It had a wine cellar, a home theater, and a master suite bigger than my entire old house with Greg. The price tag, $2.5 million. "I love it," I said, standing in the living room with its 20-foot ceilings. "It's a lot of house for one person," the realtor noted cautiously. "I plan on filling it," I said. "Not with people. With life." The financing was the best part. When the bank saw Horizon's financials and my personal equity, they didn't ask for a cosigner. They didn't ask for my husband. I signed the papers with my own hand, my own name. Moving day was quiet. No Greg complaining about the movers scratching the floor. No compromising on where the sofa went. I stood on my terrace that first evening, watching the sunset paint the sky purple and gold. I held a glass of wine, feeling the cool breeze. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. Well, mostly. Kevin came over a week later to help me set up the smart home system. He was installing voice-activated blinds in the living room. "This place is insane," he said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "You could host a summit here. Or a very large game of hide-and-seek," I joked. He laughed, coming down the ladder. He wiped his hands on a rag, looking at me. "You seem happy, Meredith." truly happy. I realized. I stopped waiting for someone to give me permission to be happy. He stepped closer. The air between us shifted again, charged with that static electricity I had felt in the office. You know, he said, his voice dropping a decibel. You don't have to do everything alone. You built the company. You bought the house. You're Superwoman. But even Superwoman needs to rest. I looked at him, his kind eyes, his messy hair, his unwavering loyalty. He had been there when I was nothing. He didn't want my money, he helped me make it. He didn't want my status, he knew me when I was a sobbing mess. Are you asking to stay for dinner, Kevin? I asked softly. I'm asking to stay, period, he said, brave and terrified all at once. I think I've been in love with you since we were 20, Meredith. But you were with Greg. And then you were broken. And then you were a warrior. I was just waiting for you to be ready. My heart hammered against my ribs. Not the panic I felt with Greg, but a warm, steady rhythm. I think, I said, taking his hand, I might be ready. We ordered Thai food and ate it on the floor of the empty dining room, laughing until our sides hurt. It wasn't fireworks. It was a fireplace, warm, constant, and safe. But safety is an illusion when you have enemies. A week later, I was in my new home office when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Meredith Brooks? A gravelly male voice. Speaking. This is Arthur Sterling. Vanessa's father. My blood ran cold. The patriarch. The man who sat on the boards of half the banks in Boston. The man whose money fueled Greg's new lifestyle. Mr. Sterling, I said, keeping my voice level. To what do I owe the pleasure? I don't like games, Ms. Brooks, he said. My daughter tells me you embarrassed her husband at a board meeting. And now I hear you've acquired Meridian and are getting cozy with Westbrook. It's called business, Mr. Sterling. It's called overreaching, he snapped. Pinnacle is family to me. Greg is family. You are a liability. I'm calling to tell you that unless you terminate your contract with Westbrook and sell Horizon to Pinnacle at the original offer price, I will make sure no bank in this city lends you another dime. I will bury you in lawsuits until you are selling pencils on the street. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. You're a small fish in a big pond, Meredith. You swam fast for a while, but the sharks are hungry. You have 24 hours to send over the sale agreement. He hung up. I sat there, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. My hands were shaking. Not from fear this time. From rage. He thought he could bully me? He thought he could use his old boy network to crush what I built? I picked up my phone and called Sarah, my mole inside Pinnacle. Sarah, I said. It's time. Send me the file. The nuclear option file? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Yes. The one with the emails between Greg and Arthur Sterling about the offshore accounts. The one proving they are hiding debt to inflate the stock price. Meredith, if I send this, and they find out, I go to jail. Or worse. If you send this, I promised, I will protect you. I have the best lawyers in the state. And when the dust settles, you'll be the whistleblower who saved the investors. Send it. 2 minutes later, my inbox pinged. I opened the file. It was damning. Greg wasn't just incompetent, he was cooking the books to impress his father-in-law. And Arthur Sterling was orchestrating it. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I had a better idea. I dialed Arthur Sterling back. Mr. Sterling, I said when he answered, sounding annoyed. I don't need 24 hours. I have my answer now. Smart girl. Send the papers. No. I'm sending you a PDF. It's titled Audit_Trail_Sterling_Brooks. I suggest you read it before you threaten me again. If you come after my funding, or my clients, or my company, this file goes to the SEC and the Wall Street Journal. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. You wouldn't dare, he whispered. Try me, I said. I'm not the housewife anymore, Arthur. I'm the CEO. Stay out of my way. I hung up. I walked out to the balcony where Kevin was waiting. Everything okay? He asked. Better than okay, I smiled, feeling the power humming in my veins. I just neutralized the threat. Now, let's plan a party. The European expansion launch party was Judy's idea, but the guest list was my masterpiece. We were announcing our London office. It was a legitimate business milestone, but I wanted it to be more. I wanted it to be a coronation. We need everyone, I told the event planner. The investors, the press, Catherine Westbrook, Eleanor Higgins. And the ex? Judy asked, raising an eyebrow. Especially the ex, I said. But he can't know it's my party. This was the tricky part. Greg knew I ran Horizon, but he didn't know I lived in Oak Ridge Heights. He thought I was still in the condo. If he knew the party was at my house, he wouldn't come out of spite. Or fear. Leave it to me, Judy said. I'll route the invitation through the European Consortium. The invite will say hosted by the Horizon Group and European partners. He'll think it's a generic corporate event hosted at a venue. He won't realize the venue is your living room. And make sure Vanessa comes, I added. It's not a show without the clown. For the next 2 weeks, my house was transformed. Florists brought in white orchids by the truckload. A stage was built over the pool. Caterers designed a menu of lobster tails and Wagyu beef. I spent hours choosing the dress. I needed armor. I found it in a boutique on Newbury Street, a midnight blue velvet gown, off the shoulder, with a slit up the leg. It was regal, sexy, and intimidating. On the day of the party, Sarah sent me a text, they're coming. Greg thinks this is his chance to network with the Europeans and find a new job before the Pinnacle ship sinks. Vanessa is wearing gold. Tacky. I stood in front of the mirror in my master suite. My hair was swept up. The sapphires glittered at my ears. I looked at the woman in the reflection. The lines of worry were gone, replaced by lines of determination. Kevin walked in, wearing a tuxedo. He whistled low. You look dangerous, he said, kissing my shoulder. I am, I replied. Are you ready to play the supportive partner? I was born ready. I'll be mingling by the bar, listening for gossip. You handle the entrance. The guests started arriving at 7 p.m. High-end cars filled the driveway. The sound of string quartets and expensive laughter filled the air. I stayed upstairs, watching from the gallery. I saw Catherine Westbrook arrive, looking fierce in red. I saw Eleanor Higgins, looking dignified. They nodded to each other, a truce in neutral territory. And then, at 7:45 p.m., the black Audi pulled up. Greg and Vanessa. My heart didn't race. It slowed down. It was the calm focus of a sniper. Showtime, I whispered to myself. I watched on the monitor as they walked to the door. I saw the look of awe on Greg's face. I saw the envy in Vanessa's eyes. They had no idea they were walking into the lion's den. They thought they were the predators. I turned off the monitor and walked to the top of the stairs. This wasn't just about revenge. Revenge is petty. This was about justice. It was about showing them that they hadn't broken me, they had forged me. I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, and stepped out of the shadows. Let's go back to that moment at the door. You know the ending of the scene, but you don't know the texture of it. When Greg walked into my foyer, he was carrying himself with that fake, puffed-up confidence of a man who knows his credit cards are maxed out. He handed his coat to the server without making eye contact. He was scanning the room, calculating net worths. "This place is ridiculous," I heard Vanessa whisper to him, her voice echoing slightly off the marble. "Who lives here? Some Saudi prince?" "Probably a tech billionaire," Greg muttered. "I heard the European partners have deep pockets. Keep your eyes open for anyone speaking German or French. We need an exit strategy, Ness." "Don't call me Ness," she snapped. "And fix your tie. You look sweaty." They were miserable. Even in their finery, they were bickering, united only by greed and fear. It was a stark contrast to the warmth I felt with Kevin. They grabbed champagne flutes and started circulating. I watched from the landing as Greg tried to approach Catherine Westbrook. She turned her back on him mid-sentence to talk to a waiter. The snub was brutal. Greg flinched, his face reddening. Vanessa drifted toward the art on the walls. She stopped in front of a painting, a modern abstract piece I had bought in New York. "Derivative," she scoffed to a woman standing nearby. "Looks like something a child painted." The woman turned. It was Judy. "Actually," Judy said, her voice sharp as a razor, "it's a verified Kandinsky. The owner has exquisite taste. Unlike some people who think wearing gold lame to an autumn gala is appropriate." Vanessa gasped, clutching her pearls. Judy smirked and walked away. I decided it was time. The moment I stepped onto the staircase, the room hushed. It wasn't because I banged a glass or asked for attention. It was because power has gravity. And tonight, I was the sun. As I descended, I locked eyes with Greg. I saw the confusion first. "Why is Meredith here?" Then the denial. "She must be working here." Then the horror. "Wait. Everyone is looking at her." When I reached the bottom step and handed him my card, the silence was deafening. "Welcome to my home," I had said. Greg stared at the card. CEO. Horizon Tech. You live here?" he managed to squeak. "I bought it cash," I said, enjoying the way his Adam's apple bobbed. 6 months ago. Odd that you didn't know. I guess you don't run in these circles anymore." Vanessa pushed forward, her face a mask of furious confusion. "This is impossible. You were living in a slum. You were broke." I agreed, turning my gaze to her. "And then I stopped supporting a deadbeat husband and started supporting myself. It's amazing how much money you can save when you aren't paying for someone else's midlife crisis." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Catherine Westbrook raised her glass to me. "But, the European partners?" Greg looked around, desperate for a lifeline. "That's me," I said. "Horizon London opens next week." "You're drinking my champagne, Greg. You're standing on my marble. And you're looking at the woman who is about to put you out of business." I turned to the room, clapping my hands to break the tension. "Everyone," I announced, my voice booming. "Please, make your way to the terrace. I have an announcement to make about the future of fintech. And trust me, you don't want to miss it." The crowd surged toward the back doors, eager to be near the winner. Greg and Vanessa were left standing in the foyer, isolated, like two statues from a fallen regime. I walked past them, my dress trailing behind me. Kevin met me at the door to the terrace. He offered me his arm. "That was brutal," he whispered. "I loved it." "Wait for the speech," I winked. The terrace was bathed in the soft glow of fairy lights and the city below. The autumn air was crisp, but the heat lamps and the body heat of 100 successful people kept the cold at bay. I stepped onto the small stage built over the pool. The microphone was waiting. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Judy, beaming like a proud mother. I saw Catherine, nodding in respect. I saw Sarah, hiding near the back, giving me a subtle thumbs up. And at the very back, near the door, I saw Greg and Vanessa. They hadn't left. They couldn't. They were like moths drawn to the flame that was burning them alive. They needed to see how bad it was. "Thank you all for coming," I began. 3 years ago, I stood in a kitchen not much bigger than this podium, staring at an eviction notice. A hush fell over the crowd. This wasn't the standard corporate synergy and growth speech. I had lost my home. I had lost my marriage. I had lost my sense of self. I was told. I paused, looking directly at Greg in the shadows. I was told I was a Honda Accord. Reliable. Boring. A depreciating asset. Greg flinched. People turned to look at him. "But here's what I learned," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "When you strip a person of everything, you don't destroy them. You reveal them. You clear away the debris so they can see their foundation. And my foundation wasn't my husband. It wasn't my house in the suburbs. It was my mind. It was my grit. Horizon Tech wasn't built in a boardroom. It was built on a floor mattress. It was fueled by instant noodles and rage. And tonight, we are valued at over $400 million. Applause erupted. Cheers. We are launching in London. We are launching in Berlin. We are acquiring new partners. But the most important thing we are doing is proving that success is the best revenge. To anyone who has ever been underestimated, left behind, or traded in for a newer model. I raised my glass. This is for you. You are not a Honda. You are a tank. And you are unstoppable. The crowd went wild. It was electric. I looked at Greg. His head was bowed. His shoulders were slumped. The arrogant posture was gone. He looked small. He looked defeated. Beside him, Vanessa was frantically typing on her phone, probably calling a divorce lawyer or an Uber. The moment I saw Greg bow his head, I knew I had won. But the victory wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who had been told she was too old or too much. If you are still listening to this point, please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below. Let me know that you are amazing, and I understand that you have been with me throughout this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement, cheering me on. Please comment 1 so I can recognize you, and now, listen to me tell the rest of my story. I stepped down from the stage. Kevin hugged me, lifting me off my feet. Catherine Westbrook came over and shook my hand firmly. "That was a hell of a speech," she said. "Pinnacle is done. Greg is done. I'm moving all my international accounts to Horizon effective tomorrow." "Thank you, Catherine," I said. As the party raged on, I saw Greg and Vanessa slip out the side gate. No one said goodbye to them. They vanished into the night, irrelevant. I thought that was the end of it. I thought they would just fade away. But desperate people do desperate things. And Greg had one last card to play, the victim card. The weeks following the party were a blur of press interviews and business meetings. Horizon was the darling of the financial world. My face was on the cover of Forbes Women. The headline read, "The Revenge Unicorn." Meanwhile, the Sterling Brooks file that Sarah had sent me was doing its work. I had anonymously forwarded it to the SEC. The investigation was swift and brutal. Pinnacle's stock plummeted 40% in one day. Arthur Sterling resigned in disgrace. Greg was fired for gross misconduct and financial irregularities. His assets were frozen. Then came the knock. It was a rainy Tuesday night, almost exactly 3 years from the day I found the receipt. I was in the living room with Kevin, watching a movie. The security gate buzzed. "Who is it?" I asked the intercom. It's Greg," a voice cracked through the speaker. "Please, Meredith. I need to talk. Just for 5 minutes." Kevin looked at me. "Do you want me to call the police?" "No," I said, standing up. "I want to see this." I opened the gate. 10 minutes later, Greg stood on my porch. He looked wrecked. He hadn't shaved in days. He was wearing a tracksuit, cheap, polyester. His eyes were bloodshot. The Audi was gone, a taxi was idling in the driveway. "What do you want, Greg?" I stood in the doorway, blocking the warmth of the house. I didn't invite him in. "Vanessa left me," he said, his voice breaking. "She filed for divorce the day the SEC subpoena arrived. Her lawyers, they're taking everything. They're saying I defrauded her. They threw me out, Meredith. I have nowhere to go." "That sounds terrible," I said, my voice devoid of pity. "But I fail to see how it's my problem." "Meredith, please," he stepped closer, desperation in his eyes. "We were married for 15 years. Doesn't that mean anything? I made a mistake. I know that now. I was stupid. But I'm drowning. My accounts are frozen. I can't even pay for a hotel. I just need a loan. 50,000. Just to get a lawyer and fight this." 50,000? I laughed incredulously. "You want me to loan you money to defend yourself against charges of stealing from the company you used to cheat on me? You have millions," he cried. "This house, it's worth more than I ever made. You can afford it. Please. For old time's sake. I'm begging you." He fell to his knees. Literally. The man who had sneered at me, who had thrown my clothes on the lawn, was now kneeling on my doormat in the rain. I looked down at him. I searched inside myself for any lingering love, any spark of sympathy. I found nothing. Just disgust. "Get up, Greg," I said. "You're embarrassing yourself." He looked up, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "Help me." "I did help you," I said. "For 15 years. I helped you build your career. I helped you look good. I helped you feel like a man. And you repaid me by treating me like trash. You said I was a Honda Accord, remember?" He flinched. "Well," I pointed to the driveway. "The taxi is waiting. That's your ride. Meredith. Goodbye, Greg. If you come back here, I will have you arrested for trespassing." I stepped back and closed the heavy oak door. I locked it. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I turned around. Kevin was standing in the hallway, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Is he gone?" "He's gone," I said. "For good." I walked into Kevin's arms. I didn't cry. I felt lighter than air. The ghost was exorcised. The fallout was public and spectacular. Greg Brooks was indicted on 12 counts of securities fraud and embezzlement. Without the Sterling family money to protect him, he had to use a public defender. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I didn't go to the courthouse, but I watched the verdict on the TV in my office. Guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Vanessa moved to Paris to find herself and escape the social shame. Her father managed to avoid prison due to his age, but his reputation was destroyed, and he was banned from serving on any corporate boards. Sarah, my mole, was quietly fired from Pinnacle but immediately hired by Horizon as our new director of operations. She got that salary bump I promised her. As for me, life went on. But it was a different life. Horizon Tech continued to grow. We opened offices in Singapore and Sydney. I started a scholarship fund for women in tech who were restarting their careers later in life. I wanted to make sure the next Meredith didn't have to start on a mattress on the floor. But the best part wasn't the business. It was the Sunday mornings. 6 months after Greg went to prison, I was sitting on the terrace with Kevin. We were drinking coffee, reading the paper. The sun was shining on the ocean in the distance. You know, Kevin said, putting down his paper. I was thinking. Dangerous, I teased. I was thinking we should take a vacation. A real one. No laptops. No phones. Where to? Italy? Tuscany? You mentioned once you wanted a villa there. I smiled. I did, didn't I? Let's go, he said. Let's go celebrate. Celebrate what? Freedom, he said. And love. The real kind. He reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a receipt for a diamond bracelet bought for someone else. He pulled out a simple, elegant ring box. Meredith, he said, his voice trembling slightly. I know you've done the marriage thing. I know it ended badly. But I promise you, I am not him. I don't want a partner to stand behind me. I want a partner to run beside me. Will you marry me? I looked at the ring. It was beautiful. But more importantly, I looked at the man. I saw kindness. I saw respect. I saw a man who loved my brain as much as my face. Yes, I said. Yes, I will. 3 years ago, I was broken. Today, I am whole. I kept the house in Oak Ridge Heights. It's not a trophy anymore, it's a home. We fill it with friends, with family, with laughter. My parents come to visit for the holidays. Judy comes over for wine nights. Sarah brings her new baby for playdates. Sometimes, I drive past the old neighborhood. I drive past the house I used to share with Greg. Strangers live there now. The lawn is different. The curtains are different. It looks small. It reminds me of how small my world used to be. How I tried to shrink myself to fit into a box that was never big enough for me. Greg thought he was upgrading when he left me for a richer woman. He chased the money, the youth, the status. He ended up with a prison cell and a bankruptcy filing. I chased my dignity. I chased my own potential. And I ended up with everything. Wealth isn't just the number in your bank account, though I won't lie, having $2.5 million cash to drop on a house is nice. But true wealth is knowing that you can survive the worst thing imaginable and come out stronger. It's knowing that your value isn't tied to a man, or a dress size, or a title. It's tied to what you can build with your own 2 hands. So, to everyone listening, if you are in the darkness right now, if you feel invisible, if someone has made you feel like you are less than, listen to me. You are not the Honda Accord. You are the driver. Pick up the pen. Write your own story. Build your own empire. And when the people who doubted you come knocking on your door in the rain, remember, you hold the key. And you don't have to let them in. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend who needs a reminder of their own strength. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice, resilience, and winning against the odds. I'm Meredith, and this is my horizon. And so, Meredith's journey reminds us of a profound truth: resilience is born in the face of adversity, and our worth is never defined by the opinions of others. Her story is not just about revenge or success, it's about rediscovering the strength within, even when the world seems determined to diminish you. It's a testament to the fact that setbacks are not endings, but opportunities to rebuild, stronger and wiser. In life, we often underestimate our own potential, especially when others try to confine us to their limited perceptions. But as Meredith proved, the key to transformation lies in believing in yourself, taking bold steps, and refusing to let failure or betrayal define your future. True power comes from knowing your value and using it to carve a path that's uniquely yours. What about you? How do you define your worth? Share your thoughts in the comments below or simply type good if this story resonated with you. Let's celebrate resilience together.